What up guys, Cole here, and in this video what we're going to cover is the exact sales process, the exact sales script that I use to take completely cold prospects. So people who don't know who I am, haven't heard of me, they're not interested in what I'm selling, they don't plan on buying on the call, all the way to where within 45 minutes, they're handing me their credit card and enrolling in what I'm selling, okay? So not only have I done over 10 million in sales just with this sales script, but at the same time, I've taught this to our 3 internal sales teams that do over 2 million a month in sales. I've taught this to over 200 plus clients and sales teams that use this very effectively. So this is validated, this works. And if you guys implement this in your business or your sales profession, it is going to be a game changer, whether you're high ticket coaching, consulting, done for you online services or agency, or even if you sell traditional sales in real estate, insurance, financial advising, or any of that stuff. So let's flip over to my screen and get into it. So there's 6 phases of the sales call, okay? There's introduction, information gathering, transition, pitch, committing phase, and objection. 6 phases. Within each phase, there's different parts, okay? So for instance, within introduction, there's rapport and frame, okay? There's 2 parts. And essentially, the way I want you guys to think about this is we go, if you can see on my screen, we start at a phase, we go across, and then once we sort of check the boxes of each part, then we go down to the next phase, okay? And then we check the boxes, then we go down to the next phase, we check the boxes, next phase, and so on, okay? That way we have a clear process, we know how to navigate the call, and no matter where the call goes, sometimes kind of the prospect gets us off the rails, we can get things back on track. So let's start off with what these phases are and going through each part at a high level, okay? Now, this isn't gonna be a training where I give you like a Google Doc of the exact scripting that you wanna use here. We're gonna go through this at a high level. And if you wanna print this document out and get it from this video, stay to the end of this video and I'll show you how to get that. So again, if you want this document so you can print it off, look at it during your sales calls, or maybe even put it up on your screen, stay to the end of this video and I'll show you how to get it. So introduction, the first thing we have is rapport. Okay, that's basically where we're just having a little bit of back and forth, nothing crazy. And we're just demonstrating we're like a real human being and we're not this crazy telemarketer salesperson or gonna be this awful person to talk to. We just wanna have good energy and kind of just get in sync with the person. This can be like under 30 seconds, okay? Very basic. Then we have frame the call. That's where we take the lead and set the agenda for the call. Now, a big mistake people make with this is they try to go way too far. They just try to go, okay, well, here's how this call is going to go. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. You need to just chill out a little bit, okay? You do need to take the lead, but those kind of hard frames like that, they'll work on unsophisticated, kind of newer prospects. But when you get into business owners who've kind of done this stuff and they've been on sales calls, it's just kind of a turnoff, okay? They just want to have a conversation. So you do need to take the lead and be in a leader position, but don't overdo it, okay? And that's a lot of people, they learn this stuff and they kind of pendulum swing, and next thing you know, they're trying to like over control the call a little bit, and it's just kind of coming off the wrong way. So the main outcomes of the introduction phase are to 1, demonstrate you're a normal human being. So answer the phone, have good energy, just have a quick back and forth, let them know, don't let them know with your words that you're not a telemarketer, but they should be able to tell within the first 5 seconds that you're not, somebody calling them from the Philippines, okay? And I know that sounds a little bit stupid, but it's just funny. Like most people's sales experience is getting these telemarketing calls that are just awful. Like you would never want to spend time with that person. So just communicating and having good energy with them just for that first couple of seconds and demonstrating you're a normal human being really helps them kind of like let the guards down. Then number 2, we want to make sure the prospect is in a good time and place for the call. So we actually want to qualify them to be in a buying situation. Now, how I do this is before I frame the call, I say, gotcha, man. Well, do you have a clean sheet of paper, something to take notes with, ready to dive in? And what that does is if they're driving, they're out at a baseball game, they're out walking, whatever it is, I can make sure that I know actually where they're at before I start, right? Because if they're driving and I ask if they have a clean sheet of paper or something to take notes with, and they're driving, they're gonna be like, oh no, I'm driving. Oh no, I'm at my kid's baseball game. Oh no, I was actually just about to take a walk. It's important for me to know where they're at, especially if it's an audio call and there's no video involved. Obviously, if you're like face-to-face on Zoom and you can see them and they're in their office, you don't need to ask that. But a lot of times with audio calls, you do want to qualify to make sure you know where they're at. Because if they're driving, the chances of them buying are much less, okay? And when you have that intel, maybe you could reposition the call, you do a triage, you do a close, now it's a 2-call. There's all these different ways you can handle it depending on what buying situation they start in. And then the third thing, we already talked about this, set the agenda for the call. Those are super easy. Once we nail those 3 major outcomes, we go to the information gathering phase. This is the part where you're asking the questions, okay? So essentially, you can see there's these different parts here. There's 8 parts within the information gathering phase. Now, when you execute these parts correctly, you're gonna do 2 things. You're going to, 1, understand if and how you can help the person, and 2, you're going to eliminate objections before the close. So these are really important because number 1, understanding if and how you can help the person. I mean, obviously, you got to ask them some questions to see if you can actually help them, okay? And then the how part, not only if you can help them, but how your product and service is going to help. Because if you're like most people, you're selling something that could help people in a variety of ways. You need to find out enough about the prospect to see which things in your solution that you need to emphasize when you go to your pitch. Then the second thing, eliminate objections before the close. So if you listen to me or most great closers, they're not getting a lot of objections. They don't, spend the end of the time on these calls doing a bunch of, backflips and objection jujitsu to get people to buy. And in fact, it's really the opposite. What really happens is they don't get any objections at all. And the prospect actually at the end of the call is really just closing themselves. And that's because the closer had the conversation in such a way in which they're not viewing the closer as a salesperson, they're viewing them as a leader. And then the prospect's enrolling themselves. So how do you do that? You execute these parts. So let's roll through these really quickly. The first one is background questions. So this is like, if it's a business owner, what are they selling? What's the price point? Stuff like that, just like basic stuff you just have to know. Pain questions are essentially what's the problem or what's the gap? What's the delta between where they are now and where they want to be? Doubt questions are, what is keeping them from fixing that problem on their own? Okay? Or what is the reason why they want to get there faster or with somebody who has a proven track record, etc. Financial and resource questions are 1, do they have the resources to be able to do this? And 2, do they have the willingness to do this? Because essentially, they have to have the resources. If your program's $25K and the person's net worth is $2K and they have no access to credit, they could never get a loan, and it's just basically a Hail Mary if they ever come up with the resources, they don't have it, okay? Now, willingness is a little bit different. That means maybe they have a net worth of 100K, your program's 25K, so they can definitely afford it, but are they willing to invest a quarter of their net worth into something to get whatever result that they wanted? So a great example of this is I was teaching a dating coach one time. I was reviewing a call, and the guy was an attorney. He was making $250,000 a year, but he had problems with his dating life. And he had a big net worth. He had investment properties, so he could afford 5K, which is what the dating coach was selling. But the problem was he wasn't willing to invest 5K to fix his dating life, which that comes down to more of a cost and an urgency issue, which we'll cover in just a second. So the next part is solution questions, which is essentially questions to find out what have they tried in the past, what are they looking into right now, and also most importantly, what have they tried or looking into right now that's very, very similar to what you're doing, okay? Because we wanna flush those things out so we can position our solution the right way later in the call. Because essentially our solution needs to be the simultaneous explanation of why everything they tried in the past has failed and why this is gonna be different. So I'm gonna repeat that because that is huge. Our solution needs to be the simultaneous explanation of why everything they tried in the past has failed and why this is gonna be different. Then we have cost questions. Cost questions are essentially, why now? What's gonna happen if nothing changes? Like, what is the urgent reason why they wanna move forward opposed to think about it or mull it over or circle back in 3 months? So when you nail this part, you don't get those uncertainty-based objections. You don't get those objections to where they wanna hit you back up in 3 months or follow up or, hey, send me a proposal or any of that stuff, okay? Because you have them associated with the cost of inaction. Next is desire. So that's getting them associated with what is the vision, what is the compelling payoff if the problem is fixed, right? What is on the other side of this? And then support questions are partner and spouse. So essentially just asking some questions to see, do they run decisions by their spouse? Do they have a business partner? So that you understand, are you getting into a situation where you might have to 2-call close or might have to take the close all the way to the end, create a 2v1, and then book a follow-up to sell the partner, to where you and the other partner who's already bought in is selling that second partner who wasn't on the call. So there's tons of ways to handle spouse partner things. You don't really know how to handle it though until you ask the right questions beforehand. That's why this is here. And when you do these things correctly, guys, you, one, will understand if and how you can help the person, and two, eliminate objections before the close. Okay, that is huge. That is really the only things you're doing in the information gathering portion of the call. And as a byproduct of that, if you do this correctly, you'll establish massive trust. Okay, and trust doesn't come from, oh, we root for the same baseball team. Okay, it doesn't come from that. It comes from deeply understanding the prospect's current situation, their problem, what's going on in their lives, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, from understanding the real stuff, not just like, oh, I used to live 15 miles away from you. It's not that. Okay, so once we knock off all those parts of the information gathering phase, we go to the next part, which is the transition. Very simply put, the transition, the only thing that's going to do is get you from the information gathering phase to the pitch in a way that eliminates all sales resistance. Because the problem is, most times people might do the information gathering phase pretty good. They go really deep. They start to connect with the prospect. And then all of a sudden they know they can sell the prospect, and then now they're a salesperson. They just jump right into their pitch, and the prospect gets this feeling like, oh man, I thought you were somebody who was real, understood me, was really empathetic. Oh no, but you're just a salesperson. Right? So how do we get from information gathering phase to pitch in a way to where there's zero sales resistance? Well, the way I do it, the prospect will actually ask you to pitch them. So I never pitch the prospect without getting permission. So there's a few language patterns you can use here to just, one, 100% understand or 100% make sure that you didn't miss anything in this section up here. And then two, basically get them to ask you to pitch them. Okay? So this language pattern, very important. However, very short, can be like 30 seconds, maybe 60. Then we move on to the pitch. Okay? So essentially the pitch is just explaining what you do in a very compelling, benefit-rich way. There's three parts to the pitch. There's the promise, which is getting them associated with what this is all about. Maybe you sell e-commerce business owners and you help them essentially grow their business and position their business in the right way for an exit. Okay? You can start off by saying, look, let me tell you what this is all about. What this is all about is giving you all of the tools you need on the marketing side, ops side, finance side, sales side, everything to be not only grow your business to multiple 8 figures, but at the same time, position it for people in private equity to want to buy. Because at the end of the day, our clients, what means success for us is getting them to that point to where they can exit. That is what this is all about. So I literally just made that up on the spot. So that could be touched up and made a little bit better, but that just gives you an example. We want to at first give them a high level of here's what this is all about. Okay? Then we break it down into steps. So to go along with our e-commerce example, we want to give somebody 4 steps of how they can go from maybe a low 6-figure e-commerce business all the way to where they have everything they need to hit that multi-7 or even 8-figure mark. And we want to break that down into 4 major key steps, which are essentially the milestones of what we need to get done together to get you to that point. Okay? And then as we explain those, we want to make sure they're benefit rich. We want to make sure the prospect knows why they're important, the cost of not having those. I could do a whole nother training on that stuff. We'll leave that for another time. Then finally, we explain the delivery, which is actually the shortest part of the pitch, which is 30 to 60 seconds of just telling them, okay, so we give you a Facebook group, we meet this amount of times a week, we do this, we do that. It's just like how the service is delivered. That's the least most important part. We just want to give them like 30 seconds just to appease kind of their logical brain on that. But most of the pitch is spent on the big promise and the bridge, which is the things we need to get done together and the benefits of those things to get to where you want to go. And the bridge is all high level benefit rich stuff, right? You're not getting into like nitty gritty, Facebook group, we're going to meet this amount of times a week. You're going to have this spreadsheet. It's not the deliverables, guys. It's the high level outcomes on the way to the big promise. Okay. That's huge. Most sales are made not by talking about the nitty gritty details. So once we get through that, then we go on to the committing phase. Essentially the committing phase is all about getting the prospect bought in that the process you shared with them, the 4 steps, right? Everything you explained with them is what they need to get to where they want to go. Okay? It's getting them bought in on the thesis. And a lot of people, like some people in sales and marketing call it the sales thesis or the marketing thesis. Essentially, it's, are they bought in on the method to getting to where they want to go? Do they really feel like the process you explained to them is 100% what they need to get to the outcome? Okay? So the key here is we want to get them bought in on the process before we ever talk about money, right? Because once money is on the table, it triggers a different part of the brain and they get very fight or flight. And then, if they give us a money objection, we don't really know if it's a smoke screen. We don't know what's going on. So before we get into money aside, we want to know, is there anything that's keeping them from being less than 100% certain that this is what they need to get to insert outcome? Is there anything else that's keeping you from being less than 100% certain that this is what you need? The 4 steps we went over is what you need to be able to get your e-commerce business to a point to where you're not only surpassed 10 million in revenue, but at the same time, we have those key components we talked about to position you for an exit. You see what I mean? So we want to get, that's called the temperature check here. That's that first part of the committing phase. We want to get that buy-in. And then obviously, if there's not that buy-in, we need to see what we missed. What is keeping them from being less than 100% certain? And then we need to handle that objection before we actually get into the real objections after price, right? Much easier to handle this stuff when price is not on the table. So after we do that, the next part of the committing phase is the next steps. So before I actually drop the investment, I give them the next steps, okay? And the way I think about it is like we're kind of going along a line here, and then they're going through the process, they're understanding everything, and I like to paint the other side of the picture, like what's gonna happen when we work together before I drop the investment. I don't like to drop the investment, then say nothing, and then only say what the next steps are when they ask. Because then it's like walking off of a cliff. So I kind of want to paint that other side before I drop the investment. Then finally, I drop the investment. Very simple. And then essentially the last part is objections, okay? So essentially with objections, I could do a whole training on this. There's already other trainings on this YouTube channel about this, but there's 3 big ones. There's uncertainty-based, there's spouse-partner, and there's finances, okay? Uncertainty-based is anything that's keeping them from being less than 100% certain that the process, the pitch that we explained, is what they need to get the high-level outcome. Okay? Uncertainty-based objections are, I want to think about it, send me a proposal, I want to mull this over, I want to do some research, I want to do some due diligence, I want to kind of, sleep on it, whatever it is, pray on it. Okay? All of that is anything that's keeping them from being less than 100% certain that the process, the 4 steps or whatever steps you explained, is what they need to get to where they want to go. Okay? Spouse partner is they need to talk to somebody else, spouse, partner, whatever. And then finances is literally like, I got to move around funds. I really want to do this, but I need a payment plan. I can't afford it right now. I literally, it's whatever money objection that you're going to get. The key here is, and this will literally make you millions of dollars, is you have to handle uncertainty-based objections first. So they might give you a money objection, but you have to handle it as if it's an uncertainty-based objection before you go to money. Because a lot of times, once money's on the table, they will say it's the money, they will say it's their spouse, they will say it's their partner, when in all reality, they're not interested. Or they're kind of like borderline, which even if they're borderline, that means when they get off the call, that borderline certainty is going to go down. And then they're not interested. So we first need to make sure there's nothing else that's keeping them from being less than 100% certain that this is what they need. Right? We want to root out what is the real objection, what is the real uncertainty-based objection, make sure that's handled before we get into spouse and partner, okay, or finances. So typically, I always, no matter what they say, they could say spouse, partner, uncertainty, I think about it, finances, whatever it is, I always treat it like an uncertainty-based objection. I do multiple different tie downs, try to find the real objection. Once I know they do really want to do it, it's just they got to talk to their spouse, then I'll handle that. Or that they do really want to do it, then they just want to, move some funds around or whatever it is, then I'll handle that. But I got to make sure it's uncertainty first. Then finally, once we close, we want to make sure we button down, okay? That means you're explaining clearly the next steps, you're reassuring that they made the right decision, and there's a variety of different things you're doing just to make sure you're going to mitigate buyer's remorse, refunds, cancellations, them not feeling good about their purchase, trying to back out after they get off the call, any of that stuff, right? We want to button down the sale. So that is it for the sales process, guys. If you want this document, comment sales process below, and my assistant will reach out. They'll send you a link to this document exactly. So comment sales process below right now. We'll send you this document. And then guys, subscribe to the channel. I run retargeting ads to this channel, which will give you a free sales course. So that's literally 30, 40 plus hours of content. I don't even know at this point. It's a lot of content on training sales teams, training setter teams, hiring closers, firing closers, building out your sales systems, tons of different stuff on the sales process. It's literally 30, 40 hours of free content. All you're gonna do is subscribe to the channel. I only run retargeting ads for the free course to subscribers to this channel. And you'll be able to download that, get your Kajabi logins, have a great time. I've literally had entire sales teams of 30 to 50 people. And you just put everybody into this course because they thought so highly of it. So subscribe to the channel now. Get that, and then also comment sales process below and we'll send you this document. So that's it for this video, guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.